And now we have the president of the student group. She's the Student Association, Associated Students president. Her name is Karina Zamora, issuing her response in writing. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you must hear a fair amount of this to believe the mindset. This is what we're dealing with. On the evening of Thursday, April 6th, the San Francisco State chapter of Turning Point USA hosted Saving Women's Sports with Riley Gaines on our campus, an event that promoted discriminatory rhetoric towards trans women athletes. Students protesting were coerced and given unwarranted warning cards threatening arrest if they violated the Turning Point USA policy. Though TPUSA was followed by protesters, so they acknowledge Riley was followed by protesters, I believe the enforcement of these policies was weaponized to silence and threaten protesters, and the presence of police was both excessive and uncalled for. Okay, tell it to Riley Gaines. The heavy police presence in response to peaceful protest and the threat of arrest aimed towards students upholding the principles of social justice and positive change leads her to believe that the administration has failed to uphold the principles our campus prides itself on. I, as president of Associated Students, condemn and stand against the hateful rhetoric and promotion of violence spread by Turning Point USA and Riley Gaines, as well as the confrontational behavior of the university police. She goes on to say, I call on the president of the university and her administration to hold themselves accountable and host a community forum to hear how damaging these tactics have been to our student body, demanding to know how the university plans to move forward with a plausible action plan, finishing with, to our trans-identifying students, we see you, we hear you, and we are here to uplift your voices. AS President Karina Zamora. In solidarity, by the way. I mean, not a word of apology to Riley, to the students who showed up there in support of Riley or wanting to hear Riley. It's all about them. They're not a bit sorry. They're prepared, I'm sure, to do it again, and they want to know why they were threatened for their behavior. So where does that leave us?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's a tension between the free speech rights of speakers and the free speech rights of those who would protest those speakers. I think we should. I think all these institutions have a responsibility to err on the side of protecting speakers, right, and allowing events to continue in a civil way, right? So that was not a peaceful protest. Whenever you're not letting someone leave a room, that's a hostage situation. It's not an exercise of free speech. So, yeah, I think there should be very little tolerance for that particular line getting crossed by protesters on college campuses or anywhere else, right? You're physically coercing somebody when you're mobbing them in that way and not letting them leave a room, or and certain speech, is threatening, right? Where you're putting people in fear for their life, right? Now the speech that questions the wisdom of letting trans women compete against biological women in a sport like swimming, that is not violence, right? And to call it violence is just a symptom of what has become a crazy ideology, right? I mean, again, this is a problem with the extremes politically, that they view everything in terms of power, and this is true both on the left and the right, but it's especially clear on the left at the moment. They're not interested in what's true. They're not interested in the actual motives of the people they're attacking. They view everything as an exercise of power, right? Even scientific knowledge, a concept of objectivity. Just asking questions about biology. All of this is power. None of it has anything to do with truth, right? And that's so crazy making, and it's so at odds with what is actually going on in the minds of people who are simply worried for obvious reasons about specific outcomes. I mean, they're worried that to take us, a specific case, a 13-year-old isn't in a position to really consent to an irreversible medical procedure, right? So they're genuinely hard problems to solve here at the policy level and at the individual level. And it requires wisdom and compassion from all of us to interact with those problems and try to find our way to some decent outcome, right? But the problems are different, and even this trans issue is not the same when you're talking about trans men and trans women, right? We don't have the analogous problem of trans men fighting to dominate their divisions in sport, say, right? You don't not having biological women transitioning to become men posing a problem in sport. So this is just
or their locker rooms, or their prison spaces, or even their sponsorships and scholarships. I mean, look how many sponsorships Dylan Mulvaney is getting now. We talked about it yesterday on the show. Even for bras and women's facial cream, aging facial cream, like oil of Olay. Like, why did we run out of biological women to sell bras? We now have to go to biological men to sell bras? I mean, and not to mention tampons. Tampax is working with Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney does not even have a vagina. I mean, it's not, am I drawing the line too close to actual womanhood here? Like, this is insane.
Yeah, but again, it's a continuum problem, right? So on the far end of one side of this continuum, you have absolutely clear cases of gender dysphoria in children at the earliest possible time, where there really is no realistic threat of social contagion or ideology, browbeating them into having a problem that they don't have, right? So, and I know cases like this. I know a trans girl who, as a 4-year-old, felt that he, as a 4-year-old boy, was born into the wrong body, right? And there were no incentives to convince this kid that that he was trans and should eventually transition. But on the far extreme of the other side of this continuum, you have obviously deranged gaslighting advocacy of just completely crazy propositions, right? The problem for the rest of us is to try to figure out how to interact with this whole space in a way that is compassionate and pragmatic. And it's so to take the case of the specific case of trans girls, biological girls, deciding that they're trans or non-binary, there is legitimate concern that social contagion is at least part of the story, right? You have lots of young girls, teenage girls and tween girls who decide they, are no longer gender conforming, right? And it's a kind of fad. And it's not to say that every one of those cases is a matter of social contagion, but certainly some seem to be. And in those cases, it is totally legitimate, and it is not at all an expression of violence or malicious uses of power to be concerned that social contagion is leading some young people who aren't really in a position to think so clearly about the far future in their lives to make irrevocable choices, to go on hormones or puberty blockers or to have surgeries. I mean, to have teenagers having double mastectomies, right? It is easy to see that well-intentioned people will get very worried about all of this, and it's not an expression of hatred, right? And this is a completely distinct problem from the kinds of problems you just raised of competition in sport, right, and denying female athletes the experience they would have of succeeding because you have biologically male athletes outcompeting them, right? It's a totally different issue, and all of these issues are getting conflated, and we're finding it very difficult to talk about these things. But this process is not at all helped by dishonest and hysterical moral panics happening on the left. And that's what is happening.
Dogs are massive parts of our lives, right? They're our family members. They deserve to be treated appropriately. So it is important to prioritize their safety and well-being. One of the easiest ways to do this is by giving your dogs a safe and secure space just for them, like we do with Strudwick and Thunder. They sleep in their crates every night. They love it. They want to go in there. It feels like their little den. And I also know that they're safe. They're not going to get into any food that's bad for them, etc. Let me introduce you to the collapsible dog crate by the American-made company Impact Dog Crates. That's the #1 dog crate for protecting your dog in your home. Built from heavy-duty aluminum, this travel-friendly dog crate can be set up in less than 60 seconds, and it folds down to just 8 inches tall. That makes it easy for travel purposes or if you want to hide it. I know what you're thinking, but a dog crate will be such an eyesore in my home. Not necessarily, and not this dog crate. Not only does the Impact collapsible dog crate come in 5 sizes, one of which can even fit a Great Dane, but you can choose from 6 vibrant colors to match your home interior. Almost nobody else has that. I haven't seen that anywhere else. Thanks to Impact dog crates, keeping your dog and your home safe is easier than ever. If you want to provide a safe space for your dog, head on over to impactdogcrates.com and use the code MK for 15% off your crate. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.